Hello everyone. My name is Hayley Milliman. Welcome to ProWritingAid 101. I am the head of education here at ProWritingAid, and I'm really excited to take you into the tool today and teach you all about how to use ProWritingAid. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have a question for me, please drop it into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That will help me keep track of it during the presentation. I will keep an eye on the chat as well, but the chat tends to move a little bit more quickly. So if there's something you definitely want to make sure that I see and answer, please drop that into the Q&A. Otherwise, you can go ahead and put it into the chat. Another quick bit of housekeeping. If you want to talk to everyone in the Zoom room, please select to send to everyone. It might be defaulted to hosts and panelists, or hosts, or just hosts, or just panelists. If that is the case, then everyone else in the chat room cannot see it. So please make sure it's defaulted to hosts and panelists so everyone can see. So here is what we will cover today. I will be walking you through how to get up and running with ProWritingAid. First, I'm going to show you how to upload your document. Then we're going to talk about the real-time grammar and goals reports. We're going to talk about what a summary report is, go a little bit into each of the individual reports, how to find the right reports for you, then talk through helpful features and other integrations, as well as our blog and writing resources. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and dive in. So I am going to move into ProWritingAid to show you how it works. So when you log into ProWritingAid, this screen on our ProWritingAid web editor is where you can begin. From this screen, you can do a number of things. First, you can hit this orange button here to either upload or add a new document. If you add a new document and you just want to start writing right within the ProWritingAid web editor, you can give your document a name such as test editor. And that will create a new document and take you to it right there, where you can start typing and begin writing right from there. You can also, as I mentioned, upload a document, so you'll be prompted to do that again here, or you can upload it somewhere on the previous screen. You can also upload from the menu button up here in the upper left-hand corner. So there are a number of different ways to get started, either again by first creating your own document and writing right within the ProWritingAid web editor, or you can upload a document of your own into here from either a Microsoft Word format, from Google Docs, etc. We'll also talk later in the presentation about different integrations that we have so that you can write while you're editing. So that will help you get started. I see a couple of people keep raising their hands. If you're raising your hand, again, you can either put a question into the Q&A, and I will come to that later, or you can type something into the chat if you would like. And that way I can answer any questions that you have. So once you have uploaded or written your document, it will look something like this. So I have a sample document here that has a number of different errors, as well as a sample sentence up here. But basically, this is what it looks like when you have text within your document. Again, it'll either look like this because you've written it into the web editor itself, or because you have uploaded a document in here. When you have a document and when you have text in here, you'll start to see what is known as our real-time checker. Our real-time checker is something that gives you a look at edits in real time. You will be able to see edits underlined in red, blue, purple, etc., which are all places where ProWritingAid has suggestions for how to improve your document. Now, the types of suggestions that you see will be dependent on what kind of document you're writing. So one of the best things about ProWritingAid is that you can customize it based on your type of document, which you can do over here on the left-hand side. So this panel over here on the left gives specific snapshots of your document, and those snapshots change based on the type of document that you're writing. So right now I have it set to general fiction. However, this is a fantasy document. So if I switch fantasy, you'll see that I have slightly different custom suggestions over here on the left-hand side based on fantasy writing. If this isn't, but if this was a CV, I would have different suggestions over here. So you can see that things here, we start to get, suggestions on business jargon. We start to get suggestions on style, all of these different types of things that are specifically related to CVs and to business writing. When I go back into fantasy, You'll see that my real-time checker over here on the left with my goals bar gives me different suggestions we start to have in fiction writing: pacing, long sentences, emotion tells, dialogue tags, all of these different types of things that happen in fiction writing that do not happen in business writing. So this panel here on the left, as well as the reports and suggestions you receive, are totally customizable based on the document type that you're writing. So I'm just going to take a look at the chat really quickly to see what questions we have. So somebody has asked, is there any limitations on word count for a document? There are not. So whether you're writing in here or uploading something, there isn't a limitation on word count. However, what I would recommend is to try not to edit more than, I would say, 5,000 to 10,000 words at a time. If your document is larger than that, it's going to end up being pretty slow to run the reports. And also, I just think from like a usability perspective, I would never edit more than 10,000 words in one sitting. It's just going to be really exhausting. So some things you can do are you can either break your document into chapters and edit that way. You can also take chapters from a larger document that you're working on in Word or something like that and move over here. You can also highlight the text, and it will basically check on the highlighted text. So there's a number of different ways to kind of break that editing piece into just one smaller section. But I would recommend, if possible, to avoid checking again more than 10,000 words at a time, just because it does make it slower, and then it is also different, or also just kind of difficult to edit that much in one sitting. I know for myself, as I'm doing human editing, or even when I'm working anything over like 3,000 words, I start to get a little loopy as I'm continuing to edit. Somebody asked, as we're going through kind of basic uploading, if it's better to upload a document than to copy and paste. If you would like to retain your formatting, it is better to upload. Uploading preserves the formatting when you export back. When you copy and paste, a lot of times there are little like hidden unseen characters that get copied and pasted along with your text. So if you are able to upload a document, I would recommend doing that to preserve that formatting and eliminate some of those headaches, just because copying and pasting in any program, not just ProWritingAid, tends to add little hidden characters that make it more difficult. So we'll keep going. I know there's a number of other questions. I'm going to get to those additional questions as we get to those parts of the presentation. So like I said, all of the suggestions that you see during here are going to populate as soon as you have text in your document. These are the real-time checker suggestions, and they are happen, as I mentioned, in real time as you're writing. Now, over here on the left-hand side, we have goals. Goals are like a large-scale snapshot of your writing and the categories that you should be caring about based on the document type that you're working on. So like we mentioned, if you are writing a CV, you're going to care about different categories than you would if you were writing fiction. For each of the goals, we have the name of the goal, a suggestion of what you should do if you are outside of the target range, as well as a target range itself. So these like circular bands here with the little tick marks are places where you can see whether or not you are in the target range for your document. Now, we establish that target range by looking at thousands and thousands of published texts in that particular genre. So for instance, we have analyzed thousands of fantasy texts and decided that this is kind of the range within which passive voice occurs in fantasy documents. If you are outside of that range, doesn't mean necessarily that there's anything wrong with your writing. What it does mean is that you are out of sync with the general consensus for your genre. So if, for instance, your readability grade was really high, it might be fine. You might choose to keep it that way, but it just, again, gives you that snapshot of whether or not you are outside of the recommended bounds for your genre. I think this is one of the things that makes ProWritingAid so special, but it's also one of the things that makes it customizable and sometimes, a very active exercise as a writer, because when you're going through these edits, I always encourage writers to think really critically about whether or not they want to have something happen, whether they want to accept a suggestion, and understanding how that suggestion kind of fits into the specific bounds set for your genre can help you decide whether or not you want to accept it or not. So for instance, I see that I'm within the bounds of passive voice here. So maybe I don't care as much about passive voice suggestions because I'm in the right, because I'm in that range, right? So this kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility to decide on which suggestions you'll accept or which you just choose not to accept based on, again, what the ranges are for your document. So these, again, are the goals for your specific document type. As I showed you before, they will change depending on what document type you have. They will also have some help text that tells you specifically what you should do if you are outside of that range. If you wanted to start to focus on any of these particular types, you can simply click on the name at the top. So what I did is I'll show you again. I was in real time. I wanted to look at my dialogue tags because I see that I'm outside the normal bounds. And I just hit dialogue tags here, and then you'll see it takes me right to the dialogue tags report. So that gives me much more specific information about exactly what I can do to make improvements to my dialogue tags. So I'll see the dialogue tags that have been found, the unusual ones that have been found, the dialogue tags with adverbs, as well as how much of my document is dialogue. So by clicking into any of those individual goals, you'll go specifically to that report to understand where you can make improvements to make your writing more clear. Now, the only place that you will not the grammar, spelling, and style, and that's because those are what these suggestions are right here already. So you can, of course, go into the grammar and style reports up here, but you're also seeing those in real time. So the real-time suggestions that you see here underlined in red, blue, and purple are all suggestions that relate to grammar, spelling, and style. Now, as you're going through these suggestions, what you can do is highlight over any, see what the suggestion is, and then decide if you want to change it or not. So for instance, here I have a readability enhancement. So instead of saying aiming to try to meet in the midst of the fields, the program is suggesting that I eliminate try to because it's a little bit redundant and is just making the sentence wordier. So I just hovered over it, decided to accept that suggestion, and it automatically applies it to my writing. So instead of aiming to try to meet, it just says aiming to meet, which is much clearer, simpler, and more to the point. Here as well, there's a suggestion to change the sentence. So aiming to meet amid the fields, aiming to meet instead of aiming to meet in the midst of the fields. Now you'll see that sometimes the suggestions don't really make sense or aren't applicable for what you're trying to do. I might even in this instance decide to keep in the midst of the fields because I like how it sounds in the sentence. Either way, that's totally fine. What I want you to be thinking about as a writer, as you're going through the documents, are which suggestions will actually improve my writing and which will be, might take away from what I'm trying to say as an author or won't have a meaningful impact on my readers. So before, when I took away the try to meet, I took it away because the words try to doesn't really add anything and makes the sentence wordier. However, here I might decide to leave in the midst of the fields because I like how it sounds. And as I went back over to my readability grade, I'm actually pretty okay in readability, so I don't need to make this change. So again, when you're hovering over a suggestion, you can either accept it. You can also choose to ignore a rule. If there's ever something that's incorrect, you might hit this report incorrect. You can also choose to disable the rule. So if you disable the rule, it turns that rule off across all of the document always. So use the disable very, very wisely and judiciously. But when you hit ignore, it'll basically remember that within this document for this specific instance. So you can see it goes away. I no longer have that suggestion. So that's basically how our real-time checker works. Again, as soon as you're inputting text, it is showing you suggestions related to grammar, spelling, and style. And then you will also see your goals in the web editor. You'll also see your goals sidebar over here, which gives you specific suggestions within particular categories. Now, if you are like me, and when you are writing fiction, you feel very precious about it, you can turn off the real-time checker. So you can just hit the button up here to turn it off, and then you just go back to your document. Like I just mentioned, am incredibly precious when I'm writing fiction, and I turn the real-time checker off because I just can't, I'm a little too fragile to get those corrections as I'm writing. I'll be distracted. I won't be able to focus on getting writing out. So I turn the real-time checker off until I am ready to edit. Then I'll come back to it. I'll turn the on and I'll be in space, like a headspace to receive those suggestions and make those edits. That for me is just in fiction writing. When I'm writing a blog post or an email or something like that, I don't care as much. I don't feel as as nervous to have so many suggestions, so I'll keep real time on for those documents. The important thing to note for all of you is that you can just turn it on or off at any point with just the click of a button. So again, if you would prefer to not see these suggestions while you're writing, you can always turn them off, then just hit the button again to turn them back on. Okay, so that is our real-time report. I am now going to go into a couple of my favorite individual reports. So some of the things that I really like as a fiction writer are our echoes and repeats reports. So I don't know if any of my fiction writers out there also tend to get words stuck in their head, but I will often get something stuck in my head, like, turquoise or something like that. And I'll describe a character's eyes as turquoise over and over and over again. The echoes and repeats reports really helps me see places where I have repeated something closely. So you can see here, I've repeated the phrase across the so many times. I've repeated it 4 times in less than 2 paragraphs. So I will probably want to go into this suggestion and change it because it's just a little bit too repetitive. It creates that echo in that reader's mind of like, oh, didn't they just say that? And these are the types of suggestions that I think are really, really valuable as a fiction writer or just as a writer in general, because a lot of times we are not able to see these things that are grammatically correct, but are often just bad habits that make our writing seem a little bit less professional or less engaging. So it's really helpful to have reports like the echoes or repeats report in here to tell me exactly what I have done that, again, is correct. It's just not or is grammatically correct. It's spelled right, etc. It's just not very stylistically engaging. The repeats report. So the echoes report finds close repeats. The repeats check finds frequent words and phrases. So for instance, I've said across the now reddened snow twice. I probably shouldn't. I probably should say that a little bit less frequently because that is a pretty memorable phrase and it's not something that would be said, often. So I should remove that, right? So these reports are super helpful to, again, make sure that the writing that you have is as effective as possible. Now, as a fiction writer, I also love using this, actually, as any type of writer, I love using the sticky sentences check. So the sticky sentences check is a check that helps find places where you have used sentences that have too many words in them. So at ProWritingAid, we like to talk about all sentences having 2 types of words, working words and glue words. Working words are your nouns, your verbs, your adjectives, the words that make the sentence make sense. They make it usable and readable for your readers. Glue words are the words that make it stick together. So words like prepositions, articles, etc. They're fine, they're grammatically correct, but if you use too many of them, your sentence gets sticky, gets too wordy and hard to read. So the sticky sentences check finds all of those sentences, highlights them for you, and tells you what those glue words are, so you can decide if you want to reduce, remove, or replace them. So the sticky sentences check highlights 2 categories of sentences. One that are semi-sticky, so between 40 to 60%. So that means between 60 and 40% of those sentences are glue words. So words that, again, are not really doing anything, not really adding to the sentence. They're not the words that carry the sentence's essential meaning. While it also shows sticky sentences, so anything 60% and above. It also shows your overall document glue index. We recommend that you stay below 40%. So that's 40% glue words, 60% working. So again, you can see within this report, am I near the glue index? Am I in the right target for my glue index? And if not, where are the places where I should pay attention? So the sticky sentences are places where, they're kind of on that cusp of being at that 40, 60 or below mark, but you might want to pay attention, whereas sticky are places that I always tend to pay attention because they have, again, over 60% glue words, which can be really challenging for the reader to kind of wade through. Some other reports that I really love are the transition reports. This document is not going to have tons of transition words because it's not a blog post or it's not an academic paper. But if you are writing papers like that, the transition report will help you understand how many transition words you've used, as well as what types of words those are, which can be really helpful to making sure that you are, including effective transitions the way you should be in those types of documents. I also really love to use the sensory report when I am writing fiction. Something that a lot of fiction writers do is prioritize over the other five senses. So this report will help you determine which of the senses you've used, and then hopefully make this report a little bit more even amongst the breakdown between the different words themselves. I also use the Diction. I really use all of the reports, but I use the Diction Report as well to find words that are vague or abstract that I can make a little bit more clear. And then I will also, again, particularly when I'm working on fiction, use the dialogue tags check, which helps you find places where you have used dialogue tags with adverbs, or where you have done places where you have unusual dialogue tags, because the main goal with dialogue is to write very simple tags like said or asked. So all of these reports are super, super helpful. And again, they can help you run through a number of different options to make your writing more effective. Now, as I recommend, I would say that, Jim, I see your question. I'll be able to get to it in just a second. What I can recommend is if you are working on different types of documents, I would recommend, first of all, making sure that you are running the real-time report and selecting the right document type in order to make sure that you are getting the most custom suggestions for your document. And then you can just work from the goals right over here on the left, which will tell you the most important pieces to make sure your document is effective. What you can also do is create a combo report based on your favorite reports. So I'm going to run a combo here, and I have a number of different favorite reports on my account, which I can use to, again, highlight what I like. So I like echoes, I like sticky, I like frequent words. You can see basically all of the reports that I just said I've put into one combo over here, and then I can just run my favorite reports. So I can get them all at one point. So there's a lot of different options for how you can work on this. Again, like I said, you can either keep it by yourself. You can also, or you can keep the reports on while you're writing. You could turn them on after you're writing. You can do a little bit of both. It's really so customizable and so effective to be able to make your writing what you want and to find the writing that you need. And quickly, before we get into some of the questions that we have, I just want to run through a number of other features that are available to you as a ProWritingAid subscriber. So when you hover over a suggestion, you will see a little eye in the corner over here. That eye is accompanied by an article, as well as in some cases a video that help you understand the suggestion and understand whether or not it's, a suggestion you want to make or not. So like I mentioned before, you might decide that you don't want to include a specific suggestion, or even that you're not sure if you would like to include that. In this case, it's helpful to be able to, again, click that little eye, decide whether or not you want to keep the feature or whether or not you would like to ignore it. So I find that super, super helpful. It's similarly for the reports itself. It goes into great detail about why we make that suggestion, what it means for your writing, and most importantly, what it's going to mean for your readers as well. Now, if you go into any of these articles and hit see full article, let me see if I can get over there. You will be taken to our blog. So we have a bunch of other helpful features. I know I saw someone asking about the FAQ. We have a blog as well as a grammar guide that take you through all of these different grammatical rules. They basically correspond to kind of all of the rules that we have within the tool, so that you're able to understand whether or not you should use or should accept a suggestion. Like I mentioned, we also have a blog that has a ton of different writing resources, all about writing from fiction to nonfiction to business writing. You can come into any of these categories and see articles, for instance, on the basics of, Freytag's pyramid and how to use it in your writing. So this goes deep into what it is, what the theories of plot structures were, what the plot points are, etc. We have similar articles, again, for grammar writing. We have similar articles for business writing, for education, all of these different types of niches that can really help improve your writing. Again, not just from within the context of the ProWritingAid tool, but also just help your writing in general. And then finally, we have, actually not finally, before we get to finally, as a ProWritingAid Premium member, you have access to 12 different ebooks over here that cover everything from, again, how to use ProWritingAid specifically, to writing a novel, to creating characters, to making the right impression with your business communications, etc. All of these are included with your ProWritingAid Premium subscription, as are our large series of webinars. So you are on ProWritingAid 101 right now. Next week, we will be having a huge week with over 20 different sessions from best-selling romance writers, all during next week. All of the recordings will be available after. We have a Q&A upcoming with the executive director of NaNoWriMo, just tons of different writing resources for you to engage with our larger community on webinars, within our blog, etc. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking a little bit, stop monologuing, and go into some of the questions that we have. So Jim, what I'm going to do, I know you asked for support putting documents into ProWritingAid. Like I told you at the beginning, which I'll just show you again, there's a couple different ways, but I'm going to, first of all, James, drop my personal email into the chat. So you or anyone who has any questions, send me an email directly after this, and then we can either schedule a time to get on Zoom or hop on a call together, or you can just ask me a question over email if you need it. So feel free to email me, James, if this tutorial that I show you right here does not help. So if you are let's pretend that you are at ProWritingAid.com. When you're at ProWritingAid.com, what you'll need to hit is Use App to upload something. When you go to Use App, you will be taken to this screen. And then from this screen, you can upload in a couple ways. So you can either hit File here and go to New or Upload. You can hit this orange button here. And if you hit it, you'll create a new document. But if you upload it, if you just hover over it, you'll see this little upload button. Either way, this is different options for uploading a document that you have somewhere else. So if you go to upload, you will pull up your file folder, whether you're on a Mac or a PC, it'll look a little bit different. And then you'll just be able to select the file that you want. If you hit add again, and you want to create a document, you can also copy and paste into here. So either of those ways is a perfectly acceptable way to get your documents into ProWritingAid. And James, again, if that's not helpful, I put my email into the chat, Hayley.Milliman@ProWritingAid.com. Please feel free to send me a personal email and I'm more than happy to help. Okay. So let me go into some of the other questions that we had. So there have been a number of questions about what this is good for. So somebody, Stephanie C. Brown, asked in the chat if this is good for blog posts. Yes, Stephanie, we use it on every single one of our individual blog posts, as well as all the guest posts we do for other groups. So you can, again, select either general, or if you want to do like general web copy, long web article, short web article, there are specific suggestions for each of those. So yes, I use this on every single one of my blog posts. We also have a Chrome extension, which I have up here. The Chrome extension is not enabled on this because it's ProWritingAid, of course, so we don't need it as well. But the Chrome extension allows you to edit where you write. And so you're able to use that specifically in Google Docs. You can use it in WordPress. You can use it in Squarespace. You can use it basically anywhere that you're writing blog posts as well. So it's basically gives you access to the full editor in any of those websites, which is super helpful. Somebody asked, is the biography genre regarding CVs or if you are writing a biography on a historical individual? So the biography genre is for the latter. So writing a long form narrative biography on a historical individual. CV and that type of thing is here under business. So biography is like individual, CV, cover letter, etc. These are all where you would talk about yourself if you're working for jobs. I see somebody who keeps raising their hand, I think escort something. Please, if you want to type in the chat or if you want to add your question to the Q&A, I am more than happy to answer, but we can't have the allow to talk function since this is a webinar. So if you want to drop it into the chat or the Q&A, or again, email me at Hayley.Milliman@ProWritingAid.com. I'll put it on the screen as well. oops, I am more than happy to answer any questions. And it's going to tell me that this document is way too short for a memo. Anyway, so this is how you can get a hold of me if the chat or Q&A isn't working for you. Okay, let's see, other questions. So someone asked, is this good for poetry too, romantic poetry? I will say that poetry, I think, is one of the things that this is the most challenging to use for, simply because poetry tends to break a lot of writing conventions. So it might help you. We do have a thesaurus report that can help you find different replacements for nouns, verbs, etc. However, I will say it'll probably light up and tell you that you're doing a lot of things wrong if you are writing poetry in it, just because, again, kind of what poetry does is break conventions, and the tool is here to help you understand what conventions you're breaking. So it might be a little bit frustrating to use for poetry. Okay, Lori asks, I just switched over from a PC to a Mac. Do I need to purchase 2 subscriptions, or will I have access to either or? You do not need to purchase 2 subscriptions. Your subscription is a per user license, so you can use it anywhere that you are. So you can just log back in on your Mac. Okay, Ron asks, are the same choices of doc types available in the Word add-on? So Ron, in the Word add-on, you can just edit anything that's related to Word. So whatever documents you can bring into Word, it looks at whatever's in your Word, if that makes sense. So .doc, docx, etc. But anything you can edit in Word, it's like just integrated right into Word itself. And that's where it has it. I'm sorry, I wish I could show you guys. I don't have Word. I'm on the Mac, so I don't have a Word add-on in here, but you basically get this exact same sidebar that I was just showing you within Word. And again, anything that you've uploaded into Word is there. Okay, let's keep going. So somebody asked way towards the beginning, is there an undo button on the app that I can't find? There is not an undo button, but you can use the keyboard hotkeys for undo, which on a Mac are Command plus Z, and on a PC are Control Z. So you can do Command Z or Control Z to undo, or undo multiple things, which allows you to undo, even though we don't have a specific button for that. Okay. Rick asks, my document is on an old license, not my current one. I need to transfer the docs to my new license. Okay, Rick, I think this is a good place for, if you email me, again, this is my email address, hayley.milliman@ProWritingAid.com. I will be able to help you transfer those over. I think what we'll just do is merge those 2 accounts so that you have them together. But I obviously don't want to give all of your info to the 60 people on this webinar. So if you send me an email, Rick, I'm more than happy to help. Okay, let's see. So Dorothy asks, why does ProWritingAid tend to confuse an apostrophe with a single quotation mark? So Dorothy, that'll typically happen if you are using curly or straight quotes. So what you can do is up here from the menu button, you can convert all to curly or all to straight, and that should fix the confusion of the apostrophe with the quotation mark. It just happens a lot of times apostrophes are straight versus single quotation marks are curly. And if your keyboard, for whatever instance, for whatever reason, is set up one or the other, it can confuse it. But converting to curly or straight is a way to separate that. Okay, Ron says, I still get save template and save normal.dotx when I save and close Word before I use the plugin. Okay, yeah. Ron, feel free to send me an email because I'm not quite sure what you're saying, and I think it might be helpful to troubleshoot together rather than on this call so that I can see what you're saying. Yeah, okay. Those are all the questions that we've had so far, but I do have time to answer some more if anyone wants to drop another question into the Q&A or the chat. Or again, I am more than happy to answer any questions over email. So if you have a specific question about your program, please feel free to email me and I will get back to you. I'm towards the end of my working day, but either today or tomorrow. Okay, it looks like we've got all of our questions taken care of. Oh, here's some. Someone asked, should fiction documents be indented? And it's less a pro writing aid question, but more stylistic. I think it really depends on how and where you're writing. So indents are less common in web formats than they are in like printed text. So if you're writing to publish on Medium or to publish on Wattpad or Archive of Our Own or something like that, then it's probably less common that you'll use indenting. However, if you're writing to publish a book, a printed book, then you'll probably be indented. So what I would recommend is check out the style guide or what similar documents look like on the place where you are working. Okay, CJ asks, is there a separate app for Macs? There is. There is a desktop app which allows you to have this right on your desktop so you don't have to access a browser. However, it does require an internet connection. So you have to have an internet connection no matter what you're doing because our reports work by accessing our database. Okay, so Lyle says, I'm trying to do edits on the final draft of my manuscript in Outlook 360. What's the best way to do my edits? Can I highlight in the sidebar and do 5 chapters at a time? You totally can do that. In Outlook 360, I would say it might be a little challenging just because of the format of Outlook. You might want to consider saving that and moving it over into Word or into Google Docs or something like that. But you can highlight and do, 1 chapter at a time or anything like that. I would recommend, honestly, Lyle, just go chapter by chapter. I don't think it's necessary to do 1 chapter, get all the edits, then go to the next chapter, and just kind of sit through it like that. That's going to be the fastest way, I think, both for the program and for you to go through. But you can definitely highlight like a specific chapter that you want to go through. To print, Colleen, you just go here, menu, and then print. Yeah, more coffee, Lyle. Yes. Anything for more coffee. I don't know if we have any plans to do anything for poets just yet. I think there are a number of other things that take higher precedence before poets. I also think that like poetry is so challenging just because again it's so stylistic and it's so much about personal preference that I think what would be more helpful for poetry is to take classes on poetry potentially and then work with maybe a personal poetry editor. I think any program is going to be really, really hard to assess, like, is this good poetry? Because good poetry just has so many different pieces on it. Okay. So someone says, if you apply report suggestions to a Word document and then you save, it holds the changes. As soon as you put the document onto another device, it loses the changes. Is there a way to prevent this? Okay. So it rechecks the changes. Got it. Okay. So what you need to do is make sure, so it checks based on your document type, if that makes sense. So if you have the document and you rename or re-upload it somewhere else, it's going to see it as the same as a different document. To get around that, what you could do is either always check in the same place, or if you do the document onto your like web editor and are just editing from the same one in here in the cloud, versus if you're like moving a Word document from Word to Word or from computer to computer, because when you do that, it's going to assume that it's a different document. So I think the 2 ways around it are, or 3 actually. One is to use the web editor and keep the, just access it via browser everywhere else. Another way is to store your document in Word's cloud or like your computer's cloud. But if it's like a hard copy saved to your computer and then moved from everywhere else, it will then be a different, it'll read it as a different document basically because it's been uploaded somewhere else. So either clouds or same document. Or same computer all the time. Maybe have an editing computer or something like that. Anything else I can answer? Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. We will send out a replay of this session after. Again, if you have any other questions, please email me at hayley.milliman@prowritingaid.com. Thank you so much, Dorothy. I'm so happy to be here and answering all your questions. If you want to spend more time with me, please come to Romance Writers Week, which is next week, prowritingaid.com/romance week. I will be doing 2 sessions at Romance Week that are applicable to everyone beyond just romance writing. I do a session on writing with clarity, which is really effective for writers of all kinds, as well as a session on like an overall editing roadmap. So if you want to hang out with me, even if you don't write romance, please register for Romance Writers Week. And then you will, get to hang out with me some more. I'm going to just put that link in the chat because it's going to have a lot of really actionable sessions. Again, even if you don't write romance. So my session, I believe, one of them is on Wednesday on writing with clarity, which people love. It's a lot of fun. And then I'm also doing one on an editing roadmap on Friday. So thank you all again so much. If you have registered for this session, don't worry, you will receive the recording, and I will get back to anyone who has emailed me either later today or first thing tomorrow. Thank you all again so much, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.